Water. Sorry. Oh, welcome everybody. Actually, I will be right back. Left something up in my kitchen. I will get ourselves started. Back. So I apologize for that. Unless I didn't bring my pattern down here with me. So apologize. As I said, I'm making a Gamers Night Out new pattern for the Switch 2. Previously, 2 years ago, I released one for the Switch 1 or the regular / OLED versions of the Switch and the Switch Lite. Here's an example of the regular OLED one. Not sure where I put my one for the Switch Lite. I'm not sure where mine went to. It's a Mario one. I'm not sure where it's at the moment. It's in here somewhere, but just to show you. So the point of the Gamers Night Out is that you can carry your cards, your wallet, not having to carry a wallet. You can carry your cards, your cash, extra video game cartridges, and your game system in a nice handheld thing that either has a handle or an optional wristlet. Now, last week I started on a tutorial for the Gamers Night Out, and the process is similar for all three sizes, except you will have a different size pattern piece for the actual shape of the bag. So this is the one for the Switch, regular Switch. And to show you, we have our interior zipper pocket, which is where I put some fun fabric. I like putting fun fabric in the zipper pockets. Don't always, whereas I have a very plain inside. This is where I put like my game cartridges and stuff like that. Then we have the card slots. So as you can see, and then you have your slot for your money. Now I have two different alternatives for when you put the Switch in here. You're like, well, my cards or the zipper pull might rub on the screen. I have, and we will be doing this, a optional flap that goes over the card slots. Or I have the game sleeve, and I'm working on the one for the Switch 2 right now. But basically what this does is it wraps around your system and protects it from anything that might scratch the screen. So you can do either or both, or it's just your choice. Just to show you, where did I put that? I just had it. Here it is. Here is the, just to show you, this is the cover for the regular Switch, and it just goes around there, velcros down. Welcome. So that will protect it from rubbing against the zipper or the cards. So you can do this, or you can do the flap, optional flap over the card slots. So those are, and as you see, this is my husband's actually for his Switch 1. I have a Switch Lite myself and a Switch 2. So that's one reason I'm making a Switch 2. And I thought, well, if I need a new case, because it is so much bigger than a regular Switch or a Switch Lite, and if I were to actually go grab all three systems, you could see the difference in the size. So last week, I started working on one, and we are going to do the step-by-step for how to put together the Gamers Night Out. This and Thanksgiving week, I will be releasing. Not sure if it's me or not. let me know if it doesn't get better or not, and I can try fixing the internet. Don't know what it is. But the Gamers Night Out, I'm going to release a new pattern for the Switch 2 version Black Friday weekend. And at that point, all of my patterns will be on sale as well. Excuse me. So I have my pieces cut out. Now, if y'all have seen me before, I'm a huge Pokemon fan. So if I'm going to do one for my new 2, I have to use a really awesome Pokemon fabric, which is from Alchemet's custom fabric. And then I'm using some lining fabric from Backstitch, which regretfully is no longer in business, but I have some really awesome looking Pokeballs. If you want to see how they look together, to me, they look really cool together. Yes, lots of color. So last week, we talked about the wristlet, the D-ring connector, which is optional only if you want to add a wristlet. And you could always do the D-ring connector and then do a wristlet at a later time. Yeah, they did that about a year and a half ago. So it's sad. It's one of my favorite places to get stuff. And we made the handles to put on our bag. And then we made the wristlet. And we started doing our card slots. So I'm just going to go over kind of what we did last week real quick. We made our wristlet. It is a 1/2-inch wristlet. Now, one thing, as I said last week, is that you actually, before you sew the big long piece into one piece, and you can see it's a really good size wristlet. It's great to be able to carry. And as you can see, I do have it on the other one. It's great to be able to carry it like that. But we have the wristlet, and as you see, the hardware we use for this, other than the zipper tape and the zipper pulls, is just what's in the wristlet and the D-ring. That's it for hardware. So as you can see, little 1/2-inch D-ring and a little 8mm rivet. And then we have our connector that attaches the wristlet to the bag. And then we have our handles. And as you can see, no raw edges on the handles, whereas on the D-ring connector, there are raw edges. Welcome. All right, so last week we finished prepping our card slots. We're going to do the next part now. So in my pattern, from a couple weeks ago, I made a jumper, and I will do other small clothing things in the future. But today I'm working on the second part of the Gamers Night Out wallet. So this was our piece for our card slots. So if you can see, I have SF101 in an alternating pattern, which actually makes it very easy to press, and you get very uniform card slots. Now, what the next part we're going to do is we're going to actually lift up. I understand that. We're going to lift up what we had folded down. So you see we're going to lift up that, and then we are going to top stitch these 3 pockets. Making sure and I will do this when we go over to the machine, we will sew, make sure each one is separate to top stitch it, because you want to be able to slide your card slots in. You can watch and you learn to sew. I talk about everything I'm doing the entire time while I'm sewing. But I'm going to switch all to the machine, and we're going to do some top stitching for the card slots and get those started and onto our lining. And then hopefully we can get to where we get the zipper attached tonight. If not, we'll get the zipper pocket slots done tonight. All right. Okay, so there we go. That's a little better. Hi, Annette. So we have our card slots. I have lifted up the part that we had folded down. So I want to top stitch my first thing. So basically, we want to fold this out of the way, and we're just going to top stitch all the way across, and then we'll fold that down, and we'll top stitch all the way across, and then we'll fold that back. And I will show you once I'm done what it looks like. Excuse me. So we are just doing our top stitch at 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Like I said, this is said the last week. I do my card slots a little differently, but I find they're more uniform than a lot of other card slots because I don't have SF101 that goes for the entire thing. Basically, my folds are around the SF101. This weather keeps changing so much. My throat's staying dry. Okay. This is our second line of top stitching. And we are going to do our last line of top stitching. Because we just want to top stitch these folds, and that's it. Okay. And now I'm going to trim all my threads. And we have. Now, what I'm sewing with is cotton canvas. If you're curious, I've sewn this with. This is cotton canvas, but however, usually for card slots, because it gets so thick, I will say use cotton woven. Because do not use waterproof canvas because then it is way too thick. I have done it. You will break a needle more than likely. All right, so now what we're going to do, just to show you, you can see I have top stitching here, here, and here. So now what we're going to do, the part that is folded back, we're going to lift that up. And starting at that fold, we're going to sew at 1/8 of an inch on each side so that we can secure our pockets down. So you can hear how thick it is on those seams. And we're going to add more. Hope everyone is doing well today. All this change in the weather is the birds. One day it's in the 50s, one day it's in the 70s. And this morning it was in the 30s. So you got to love how many seasons we can have in one day. All right, so we have top stitched that. Previously, I have also shown how to do game card slots as well. We had a lot of rain last week, almost like 4 days straight. I was so glad to see the sun on Friday. So we have, as you can see, we have our cards, but whoops, that's not going to work. These are not card sizes. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this and measure the center of our card slots and make a mark. So I'm going to go over to my cutting table and use my little chalk marker to mark my halfway point. So y'all just bear with me just being a disembodied voice for the moment. So since I'm not moving the camera around for it. It is my exact halfway point. And use my little chalk marker. And I do chalk a lot of times. The heat friction pins too. Just depends. This is a very busy fabric, so I want a very bright thing I can see. So I use the white chalk marker. So just to show you. Well, you gotta love this. North Carolina, you go from having 4 seasons in one day sometimes. This morning I was freezing. This afternoon I was hot. So it was like in the mid 30s this morning, and it was 75 this afternoon. So we have our center. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to sew. We're not going to go all the way up here. We're actually going to sew from the top of that first fold all the way down to get our thing. I hate when that happens. So we are going to do our, make sure you top stitch this because this is where your cards will be. So it gets a lot of wear and tear. That's the best way to put it, in my opinion. Now, to do the card slots, we have to do things a little differently because a card slot is, we actually have to sew each of the lines down through each thing after we do the center line. So we would not sew the sides. Some people want this to store their game cartridges. I don't, because that's actually why I put the zipper pocket in. In another video, I will go over how to put the card slot spaces. But since this is for my personal one, I'm not doing that today. So as you can see, we have our card slots. And just to show you, let me grab one of my business cards. Show how well it fits. We still have plenty of room for our sewing seam allowance. So now that we have sewn our center line, and I'm just rubbing off the excess chalk. And if you really want to worry about it, you can take a damp cloth. That's what's great about chalk. What we're going to do is we're going to take this and we're going to fold it down to the bottom. And we're going to pin it. Make sure you leave a turning hole. I usually say about 3 inches. Now, I've been having fun making lots of new pattern pieces because I know most of y'all who have sewn mine before are used to me having just a cut list. This is the one pattern that is slightly different. Most of it is a cut list. However, the main pattern pieces are an actual pattern piece that you can print out and put together. And since the Switch 2 is so much larger, it definitely has 2 pieces you have to put together and tape together. Okay, so we have our pieces, and what we're going to do, leave our opening down at the bottom. We're going to sew around using a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance on both sides. Now, most of this pattern is put together with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. However, there are a few exceptions, and they are written in that particular step of the pattern. I hope y'all have had a good week so far. But I do plan on this new pattern being released the week of Black Friday. I'm sending it out to my testers either today or tomorrow. Probably tomorrow morning. And so before I sew the other side, I'm trimming for when I turn it. Whoops, that wouldn't be a good spot. About started sewing in the middle of my hole. See, not everybody's foolproof. I mean, everybody is not foolproof. Better way to put that. Excuse me. So this is at a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance yet again. And if you have put your SF101 on correctly or perfectly centered, the SF101 will not be in your seam allowance, which does cut down on the bolt. So just to show you, you can see the SF101 and how it is not over here, but it is in the center here. So I'm going to trim off my corners yet again. And a lot of times I will, just to reduce bulk, I will actually trim down my seam allowance by about half on both sides. I don't do it on the bottom because that's where my opening is. Okay. So I trim off that. Oh, that's awesome. So now that is done, what we're going to do is we're going to flip it inside out, or right side out, not inside out. It was already inside out. We're going to flip it right side out. And this is why you want to make sure you leave a big enough hole so you don't pop your seams. Otherwise, you're going to be turning it right back inside out to be able to sew your seam again. All right, so now we're going to take my little pointy stick and I point out all 4 corners. And we do that to both sides. Tool caught in the pockets. Y'all make me feel like a youngin' if y'all are talking about grandbabies and great grandbabies. I only have my youngins. I have a almost 9-year-old and a almost 18-year-old. So trim some threads from poking things around. All right, so we have our pocket. So if you see, we have 3 card slots. And what we're going to do is we're going to go press it to close this up. And then when we get it pressed, we're going to top stitch across the top here. I will be right back. So I'm not young. So, sorry, don't think y'all want to see my chair. But yeah, I'm just going over here to press my pockets. And apparently I didn't poke out that corner well enough. So I come back for the pointy stick. But I love my rainbow pointy stick. So we are going to press this. Now, as I said before, these instructions will be able to be used for any of the sizes of the gamer's night out. The differences are the pattern pieces, placement of things, and things like that. But that will come up for each size. I will be releasing the Switch 2 as a separate pattern. So now what we're going to do is we're going to actually top stitch across here just to make it where it's nice and flush. And then we're going to attach it to one of our lining pieces. And as you see, we've already got our center marked here. But we'll get that over there. I'm going to go ahead and top stitch it real quick. I'm not going to bother switching it around for y'all to see. For me to top stitch like 2 seconds. But this is just to where that fold stays nice and straight. Okay. All right, so we have it top stitched here, as you can see, across. So we're going to grab one of our lining pieces. I usually put the card slots on the one where the curve is on the right hand side. So the biggest thing here is to mark our centers of both the card slots and the lining piece. And since I have, of course, a black background, since I usually use like a Sharpie, Sharpies are not going to show up. So I'm using a pen, which is not a big deal. All right, there we go. So what we're going to do, depending on which size you're making, in the pattern, it tells you how far up from the bottom, because it differs for each size. You will need to measure up to pin our card slots. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get me a little ruler. It's great to keep little itty bitty rulers all over the place near your sewing machine. So I will take and measure this. We are getting that right. So I will hold that down. Now, a lot of times I will do this on my cutting table just so that it will stay flat and not move around. But since I have y'all here with me, I will pin it while I'm here. Sometimes it just depends on how much of a effort do I want to make. And we will measure to make sure it stayed at the same depth further down before I pin it again to make sure it's nice and straight. We won't talk about how many rulers I have. I probably have about 50. Some of the same sizes, different colors, things like that. And I have some things I bought when Joann's went out, some things I had that have been given to me, or I like all different sizes. I mean, if we just go by what's right here on my, right beside my sewing machine, lots of different size rulers. I even have my little round edge ruler. So that's how I keep track of everything. Those are always fun when you find the mystery ruler and you're like, when did I get these? All right. So I've got the bottom, just to show you, I always pin the bottom first. And this is another reason why you don't want to, if you have a waterproof canvas for your lining, you don't want to sew through like 6 or 7 layers of waterproof canvas for your card slot. I have. Don't recommend. I think I broke like 6 needles that time. I think I went like an inch. This is cotton canvas, so it's a little thicker, so I don't interface it as much as I do cotton woven, but it's a little more durable. And when I'm making for game system, I want it as durable as possible. All right, and here's one thing I want to show y'all before get started. I got to reach over here for my bag of labels. Well, I actually have a OttLite that's right here, and it has little holes, and I've got scissors stuck in some of the holes, and I've got thread on it, and it has that. I've got a calculator on one of the things. That's not what I want. So whenever I get labels, I have lots of different labels for my business and stuff. And I have different varieties. And if you ever need good labels made for your business, my favorite is Jennifer's Jewels. And she can do them. Just to show you, here's one of mine. I have some that are different ones, but this is my logo. I don't put, some people put some of those funny saying tags. I like my tags. See, I have them in bulk in the white, but I have a few of the black, and then I have some that hang down like that. So I also have some wooden ones. So tags are always fun and a good way to add, especially if you're selling them, to add your business out there. So in this case, this is where I find one of the best places to put my tag, is that I will actually, and I will add it as I, so what we're going to do, you're like, well, we haven't top stitched it. Well, we're going to top stitch it by stitching it to the lining of the pocket. And what I do on the side, that's the straight side, I tuck my little tag in, like right there into the seam allowance. So I will go ahead and move to the machine and I'll show you what I'm doing, and then I'll show you when we're done. All right. Yeah, the last one I sewed, I forgot the tag, and then I had to seam rip and put it back in. So if you're going to put a tag, this is where I put the tags. Or at least if you're going to do a either business tag or a funny tag, this is where I say to put them because it's visible but not visible. So, all right, so we're going to top stitch this. I don't like, see, it was making it have a nice little lump. Like I said, you can see how thick it is with just cotton canvas. Yeah, what my rulers are on is called, they're called book rings. Okay, so we are going to top stitch that. Make sure you back stitch. So you can probably hear. And if you feel like it's too thick, this is why I say even in the pattern, use cotton woven. It's a whole lot easier than if you're doing canvas of any type. And I could have done it out of the same lining fabric as the Pokeballs, but a lot of times I like to make the it pop. So I will do it outside of that. Got a random little string popping out. There we go. That's better. So we are just sewing this on. So it's a lot thinner down at the bottom because you're not having all those pockets. So it's a lot easier to sew. And this is also sewing our hole in the bottom of the card slots closed. Now last week I had a completed switch to show y'all, but I've already sold it. So sorry. But just to show you, I'm going around that last corner and I have my tag. Now my tag, this is one that folds over, and a lot of the ones that are funny. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to slide that under my seam allowance right up to where I want it. And then I'm going to go over it. Now, as you can hear, we're going through a thick part, so I go slow. You can also hand crank it. If you feel like a seam is too thick, you can get what's called a hump jumper. And we've got to the end. Make sure you backstitch yet again. And I make sure to trim my threads. All right. So next, to finish off this, we can pull out the center. So one thing is that we have a flap, like I said before, to cover up the cards. So to do that, we have, excuse me, flap. So what we're going to do, this is at where it's taller than it is wide. And this does not change for any of the sizes. This is the exact same for all of the pattern sizes. So what we're going to do is right sides together. We're going to pin it. Now, if you look, this is cotton wove. Our SF101 on the back. Now, you can use any woven interfacing. Just wait, Melly, till you see my zipper pulls I have to go with this. If you like Turtle from Pokemon, you'll be excited. So, what we're going to do, So just kind of how we sewed our card slots together, we're just going to go and sew around here at a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, leaving our opening. And yes, I know those are Pokeballs, and I have variegated blue thread, but my main fabric has a lot of blue in it, so I want to stick with my variegated blue thread. And it will actually really pop on this fabric. And I had a choice of using either black or blue Velcro, and I decided to use black because in a lot of ways I want that to blend in, not be as visible. But I have done it where it is a very big contrast. I think I did a Minecraft with lime green. Done a Mario, and so it just depends on what you want. So I'm going to trim my corners again. And if you've ever come where you have a fold, the best way to trim a corner so it nice pokes out easily is to cut down at a diagonal from the fold. You don't want to get right up to your seam, but if you cut down from the fold, that gives you that nice, pretty corners, just like the other corners. Just a little tidbit of information. So we're going to pin this in place. Make sure to sew at a 3/8 of seam allowance yet again. I said most of it is sewn with a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, and we're going to trim the corners yet again. So we are going to turn this right side out. And of course I forget to cut my thread. So we may stop after we do the flap, and then we'll do the zipper pocket and the main body zipper next week, because I'm looking at the time and it's been a long week as far as school and everything else we've had to do with. My daughter had her scans last Wednesday, and they came back good, but still worn out. That stress can really wear you out. It's the best way to put it. And went and exercised this morning doing some water aerobics, and I'm just tired. So all right, so we are poked out. Now you can take this over and press it, but what I'm actually going to do, a lot of times if I think it needs a good press, I will. If not, I will just kind of finger press it, and I'm going to pin it together at the opening. Right here. So as you can see, and what we're going to do is we're going to top stitch all the way around. Okay. And I usually start in the middle of my opening, just so I know I'm starting and finishing where that opening is. Okay, so for the next part, you will need 1/2 inch wide Velcro. You can find 1/2 inch wide But even as I say in the pattern, you can get 1 inch wide, 3/4 wide, because 3/4 is probably the easiest thing to find. And you can trim it down to a 1/2 inch. It just needs to be in 1/2 inch when you sew it down for this to fit correctly. So I'm doing the last curve around there. And that way y'all didn't have to go watch me stand and press it. And that's it. And if I feel like I'm doing okay in that regards, sometimes better fabrics don't need as much of a press as others. And you can finger press them and they'll stay like they should. Okay, so we're going to trim the threads. So just to show you, we have a nice prettily top stitched flap cover. Now what we're going to do here is we are going to find, so this is my right side up, if you can tell by the Pokeballs. So this is what I want down over the cards. So basically I'm going to flip it so that this is my underside and I'm centered across the top here. So the biggest thing you need to do is find your center. And that's what I do. And we find our center. And just to make sure I'm putting the right one, yeah, we've used the, so if you ever look at your Velcro, you have your hook and your loop. Your loops are the soft. The hooks are the ones that feel very rough. So I think it's a hook pulling on the loop. So we're going to take our hook side and put it and center it over the center. And we're going to stitch around at 1/8 of an inch all the way around. So what I will do is use one of my little handy dandy rulers again. And this is a 2-inch piece of Velcro. So to be centered, it's a inch on each side of my center. Okay, so we are going to stitch it again at 1/8 of an inch all the way around. If you want to, you can do a crisscross, like an X, to be more secure. I've not found with something that's this small that you really need to. So I don't. So I am stitching at a 1/8 of an inch. And we are doing that all the way around. And I will show you what that looks like. Let me trim my thread on the back side. So we have our Velcro. And then see, you can see where the Velcro is sewn. And if you piece it just right, it about overlaps the top stitch. So, and now if you lift up your flap, that's right side up. And then what's up against the lining is also right side up. So what's next is you're going to take the loop or the soft side and we're going to center it right underneath the card slots. So I'll pin it and show you what I mean. And we're going to sew that on as well. So I take my little handy dandy ruler. Okay, and I will pin it in place just so you can see. Well, kinda. You can also use some double-sided tape here, but just to show you, centered right there. And before I start sewing it on, I will actually make sure it is centered again. It is perfectly centered. And I will show you why that's a thing in just a minute. So we are going to stitch this down. And I'm not switching it over just for you to watch me stitch a little rectangle. Basically, you're showing like a little 1/4 inch rectangle. That's what it comes down to. Okay. So I'm going to trim my thread and I will show you. So it is now stitched on. So to actually attach our card slots, now we are going to take our flap and put it and match it up with the Velcro that we just did. Okay. So we have our thing. And what we're going to do is we're going to go top stitch across using our top stitch we've already done and stitch across to stitch it down. So I will move this camera over for that. So I make sure that my Velcro is good and sturdy where it's at. Make sure it's straight.